So I am Miss Kristen, this is Mr. Dakota and Mr. Colton, and today we're going to tell you all about Gathercoal Judicious Discipline. So this was a really great quote that I found that kind of sums up the entire discipline model. It says, "You may do what you want in this classroom until it interferes with the rights of others."
Alright, and now we're just going to go over a quick overview of it and go over how the model works in the classroom. So it's a philosophy and a framework for a classroom. So philosophy is how you think about it, and a framework is how you build your class around it. So it's a little bit of both, and then it's about classroom management and discipline. It is a citizenship approach. So a lot of this is based off the Bill of Rights, is what they went off of. And with that, it's basically how others have to treat each other. And it kind of goes into that next point right there. It teaches others about their rights and responsibilities for living and learning. Like I said, it's based off the Bill of Rights. And it had the first 3 points of this was time, place, and manner. And that was what they told people in the court was this the time and place and manner for that action. And they're trying to get students ready for the world and when they get out there to kind of live by those rights. And then there were about 7 main points to this, and property loss and damage was the first one. Threat to health and safety was the second one. Legitimate educational purpose, serious disruption of the education process, freedom, justice, and equality. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about those here in a second. So this chart is on your guys' handout, and it basically just breaks down those first 4 points a little bit more and talks about like what they're actually trying to say. So the first one was threat to health and safety. So this is just keeping everybody safe and healthy in the classroom, making sure nobody gets hurt. So as we'll show you in an example, I'm going to hit a water bottle down, and that could end up flying to hit somebody. And then it also goes to the second one, property loss or damage. So I knock that water bottle off. Next time it might be a computer, it might be somebody's cell phone, it might be a coffee that spills onto somebody's stuff. It's just treating everything, and that goes along with everybody else's stuff, like the chairs, the teacher's stuff. Let's say you borrow, the stapler and you're messing around with it and it snaps, or I don't know what it might be, like the tape thing. Any of that stuff, it's just treating everything with respect. And then the next one is respecting the rights and needs of others. This can be giving them the chance to learn. And that kind of goes along with the last one too, taking the responsibility to learn. So if you're sitting there talking and messing around with the person next to you, you're not giving them a chance to learn, and you're not allowing yourself to learn. All right, and this was the 3 foundational principles of our plan, and the first one is freedom. So all students have the right to express themselves. So, and there's a line that needs to be drawn, and that needs to be communicated by the teacher. But all students have the right to show who they are and be themselves in the classroom. So they can learn the way they need to. Let's say you have to give somebody a bouncy chair, or something they can mess with during the lesson to give them the chance to learn. And the teachers and others have to respect their rights. And this can be from a standpoint of maybe there's a learning disability in your class. The teacher has to attend to that needs, and they got to make sure that everybody else isn't making fun of this person because they're just trying to do what they can to either learn, or they're just being who they are. And I think that's a big thing with teachers, is we need to make that clear that it's okay to be yourself and be who you are in the classroom. Justice. So when it comes to this, most of teachers at the beginning of the school year are going to go over rules and expectations and consequences. This way, the students know what's expected of them. They can't say, "Oh, you didn't tell me that," or Well, that's not exactly there. You gotta go over these baseline rules so the students know exactly what you expect and what they have to follow. Equality is the next one. Students have to get what they need to be successful. And this is things like IEPs or that special education help that student might need to be successful. And the last point I thought was really important, fair does not always mean equal. And that's a big point, because let's say you give somebody else some notes that they can use because it is in their IEP, and you don't give them to the other student, and they're like, well, why'd you give them that and not me? And it's because, fair is not always equal, because they need that to be able to learn in your classroom. And now I'm going to pass. And then I think we're going to do our example now. So if you guys want to go ahead and turn to the back, or the third page. So Colton's, yep, right there. And we're going to do sports. You're just going to name different sports off. Colton's going to be the teacher, and we're going to use cold call as our Lamont technique.
All right, guys. So, we've been talking a lot about sports in this sports history class. And so I'm going to see how many sports you guys can name. I'm going to give you around a minute, okay? Now, I know some of you like to start early, but don't. All right, Annie? We're not going to give you 10 minutes. That'd be too long. Okay, go.
Me?
Everyone, go.
Oh.
No, write them. Write them.
The shotgun sport?
Oh, you know it is.
All right. You're correct. You are so correct.
All right, guys, 30 seconds, halfway there. Fifteen seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pencils down. Okay. So I'm just gonna kind of call on some people just randomly. We'll see what sports you came up with, and then I'm gonna just kind of keep a tally up here of all the different ones I hear. We'll see how many you guys get. So Brandon.
Golf.
Golf. All right. All right. Dakota, hey, will you come up here real fast? Now, I don't really think that was necessary.
So we're just messing around.
I know, but that was someone's property, and I think if you're gonna do that stuff, maybe do it outside of class or just not do it at all, because at the end of the day, that's her water bottle, and would you like her doing that to you?
Is it any with a computer?
Definitely not. Water bottle, computer, paper, whatever.
Outside of class?
Not outside class, definitely not my class.
Okay.
But it's a property thing, and you should know that, disrespecting someone's property, stuff like that, that's just not gonna be allowed.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so, apparently we only got one thing, it was golf. But, we're not gonna go.
That's how I feel about golf too.
I didn't
Don't
even
put golf on my list.
I didn't either.
Me either.
But,
Who had racquetball?
but no, so that was just kind of, we just kind of wanted to show you guys.
Really? Martha, how many did you have?
That's all I care
No, I just have to go through that,
I had 11 too. I kept up 11.
Anyone beat 11?
We kept up with a P.
12. 13.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, so how would this play into the Bill of Rights of what just happened in the classroom here? Can somebody raise their hand? I'll do a roll call. Brandon.
I just like cold call. Can you claim that now? Oh man.
Reagan.
Yeah.
Will you repeat the question?
So how would this what the code CODA did, like, how would that affect, like, how would that play into what the Bill of Rights says and like why we stopped him and, you
Well,
know?
that's damage of property.
Correct.
Which plays into this chart right here, and it could have led to the health or the safety of others if it would have been a computer or something else that would have broken. Or if I would have threw it across the room at, I don't know, at Brandon up here. If I would have just thrown it, hit him in the back of the
I would
head.
have sued you.
I think it could also play into not respecting others in terms of learning, because I'm thinking about specifically middle school boys, that if a boy had walked by and hit a water bottle off of the desk, the kid who had the water bottle is probably gonna throw a fit of like, dude, what the heck? Why'd you do that to me? Like, it's gonna be a bigger deal as well for the other student, and that's distracting and preventing time for learning as well.
And so now I'm gonna pass it off to Colton to talk about the benefits.
Okay, so, this is obviously in your handout, but, so benefits are, their students will learn social skills, so, social skills obviously being talking, working well with others, interacting. Teachers were less likely to feel frustrated, so this just means that I think because you have these rules set forth and, it's based off the judiciary system and the Bill of Rights that, students, kind of do follow it. They are likely to have less stress. This one, I think it all kind of depends on how well your students follow these rules and how well, as a teacher, you feel that these students are following the rules, of how your stress levels would be. They were more likely to be respected by others, which that makes sense. If you're following, human rights and respecting other people's property, that would go along with that. Teachers and students use professionalism. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. The technique is legal, ethical, and educationally sound, which once again kind of falls in line with the Bill of Rights. Learn how to deal with your social problems. We talked about social skills and just interacting socially with people. They learn problem-solving techniques. So obviously, I pulled the code up here. Hey, this is why you shouldn't do this. He kind of went back and forth. No, this is what we're kind of going off the Bill of Rights here. This is what it says: respect people's property. And then also they see how their behavior in the classroom relates to their behavior outside of school. So I think as teachers, you want, lots of people don't have good role models, or they don't have people to look up to in their household. And so I think as teachers, especially, if we can show them how you're supposed to act in the classroom, hopefully that correlates and that they bring that out into outside the classroom as well.
I want to go off that point real quick. Teaching them how to act outside the classroom is very important, because like you said, not everybody has that role model. And you get them used to following these rules here in the classroom, it's going to be a lot easier to follow them outside the classroom.
I also think this is important, kind of just bouncing off each other, that specifically in math as well, students always want to know, well, when am I going to use this in real life? How does this relate to me? So I think taking that from content and also putting it on their behavior, then they're seeing why it's important to act this way in the classroom, because it's how you're expected to act outside of the classroom as well.
So here's some disadvantages. Takes students a little longer to be involved in school-wide aspects of the judiciary plan put forth. And when we first got this, I looked at this, I was like, I've never even really thought of this, this kind of strategy. And I do think that it would be really difficult to implement in probably a middle school, and really, I think you'd be pushing it in lower level high school, 9th, 10th grade. I think, kind of like what we talked about last time, it's kind of one of those things that once you get older, students kind of know what you expect. That's kind of how I view it. I think it would work well probably in a junior or senior class, and then obviously in college especially. But I do think that if you really don't know the Bill of Rights, or you don't really understand kind of like the judiciary system, it would be somewhat difficult to understand. That's why I think it would be better in kind of more of an upper level classes. Does not provide different learning styles and lacks many aspects of proper classroom management. Yeah, I kind of see this as well. The learning styles, it's just kind of, there's not a whole lot of room for change. If you're going just kind of by the book, what it says is just kind of what you do. It's dependent on the Bill of Rights and not an individual management plan. This can be an issue, whereas someone acts out, and you treat everyone, you have to treat some students differently, and we've talked about that in class. But if you are just going kind of by the book, there's not a whole lot of fluctuation. You're just kind of going with what it says, what the Bill of Rights say, what, the Constitution says kind of thing. And so there's just not a whole lot of room for fluctuation. Concepts can be difficult to grasp, and students may struggle to understand concepts, kind of like what I was saying earlier, because it is kind of a higher order learning, it's somewhat difficult to understand. Can also focus on social issues and more than issues that directly affect the classroom on a day-to-day basis. So I think, I don't know if this is the right way to say this, but personally for me, I think that in the world today, we focus too much on social issues anyway, and I think, we're always like, well, is this right? Am I hurting people's feelings? And the truth is, people's feelings are gonna get hurt. But I also think that in a classroom setting, you can focus too much on rules and too much on, like this, like the Bill of Rights and social issues, instead of just expecting kids to know, to know what's right from wrong, and just going on with your class and just teaching.
Okay, so how this model contributes to classroom management. These are kind of these 4 things like we talked about earlier that were in the chart, I believe, but it kind of gives examples of each of these things. So the first one, act in a safe and healthy way. These things could be walk in school, not running or skipping up and down the hallways. Follow playground rules, that's kind of more of an elementary type deal, but still works. Keep your hands and your feet to yourself. I see this middle school subbing all the time. I'm standing out in the hallway doing hallway duty, and the middle school boys are in the classroom fighting each other. So, keep hands and feet to yourself. Using a person's name when speaking makes it more personal. And follow bus rules and use the furniture correctly. So, not sitting with your feet up in the chair or sitting on the desk, things like that, because somebody could fall off of the desk and get hurt, things like that. So,
or with your chair tipped back so far that
Yeah, you're gonna
anybody
bust your head
touches you, you're gonna fall and hit your head.
yes, yes. What other things could you guys think of that would go with this, acting in a safe and healthy way? Maybe something we don't have listed up here.
Lab safety in a science classroom.
See, those are things I don't think about because I'm a math teacher, so those things don't cross my mind. Anything else?
No vaping in school.
That's a huge issue in middle school right now.
Vaping, is that what you said?
Yeah.
You think
The
you got a flash
electronic
drive, you got
cigarettes.
a Juul, it's all the same thing now.
The high school students are buying them and selling them and making a profit off of middle schoolers because you can't buy them until you're 18.
Oh my God.
And so that's become a huge issue. I didn't think about that. So then that'll kind of lead into treat all property with respect. So take care of the furniture. Leaning back in your chair that far is not taking care of it because you break the chair. Treat books with respect. Kids peel at the corners and pick at the books in different ways and not respectful. The bathrooms, drawing on the walls, things like that. Computers and all personal property. So when Dakota asked if he could knock my computer off of my desk, that is not treating property with respect. Computer and all personal property, so not just the computer. Ask before using other people's property as well. Any other examples you guys can think of?
Like drawing on the desks or carving the desk.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves.
Putting gum.
Gum also. Yeah, I know a lot of schools have said no gum anymore. Like Wentzville
Yeah.
School District, where I've been subbing, can't have gum. Like gum is detention worthy in Wentzville. So I guess that takes care of that one.
I know that like when I was in middle school and stuff, we had a lot of problems with the bathrooms. Like you'd walk in there and people would put like ranch underneath the toilet seat, so when you sat down it shot everywhere, and yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff like that, so.
How do people think of these
I don't know.
things?
It scared you though, it did do that.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of respecting the rights and needs of others, because
Yeah.
that's not respecting the rights of other people to peacefully use the bathroom. So keep your hands to yourself, kind of like we talked about earlier. Not only is that not safe, but also is kind of violating your personal space. So work without distracting or disturbing others, respect of others' learning. Cooperate to help others learn. So that could be working in cooperative learning groups. That could be just sitting next to your partner and they ask you a question and you'd be nice and help them answer the question instead of just pushing them off to the side. Using respectful language, I know in middle school as well, that's a really big thing right now, that kids think it's cool to cuss, and kids think it's cool to disrespect the teacher. So I think that's something really important to stop at the beginning of the school year. And then guard the process of learning, so don't let other kids mess that up. Do you have any other ideas along those lines? All right, so go to the last one. Taking responsibility for learning. You listen to others, do your homework, and return it on time. Not only is that respectful to other students, but also to the teacher, respecting the teacher's time. Try your hardest to do your best work. Also respectful for the teacher, because it makes grading a lot faster. Be prepared for school, have your pencils, books, and folders, and keep track of all of your materials. That way it's going to help you learn the best. Anything anybody wants to add to any of this?
Well, I'm thinking about the plan that I did, the dignity with discipline. And ours was also about taking responsibility for your mistakes and your misbehaviors. So that could be a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like this
Yeah.
one kind of went hand in hand with what you guys presented personally.
I didn't think about that,
Yeah.
but yeah. So a couple of variations and adaptations. This was kind of hard to come up with because kind of like, I think it was Colton said earlier, it's a by the book, it's the Bill of Rights, that's it, kind of deal. And so I actually couldn't find any online, so we kind of worked together and came up with these on our own things that maybe we would do. So the first one, students who don't know the Bill of Rights, you may have to spend a little more time at the beginning of the year and throughout the year reminding them what they are and how to, meant to explain them a little bit differently for them to understand what it is, especially in middle school when maybe they haven't gone over the Bill of Rights a whole lot. That could be an issue. So then also integration into a history lesson, either in middle or high school history class instead of at the beginning of the year. So I don't teach history, so obviously I don't really know the order that things are taught, but if it's at the beginning of the year, this could be a really good way to introduce your classroom management plan because you're teaching the Bill of Rights as well. So then it kind of ties everything together. So that could also be kind of a later in the year thing that you switch up a little bit. So then rather than implementing only this plan, you could include these ideas in an individual behavior contract, since this does not cater to the individual, kind of like it was mentioned earlier. So you could use pieces of this strategy with the individual behavior contract. I personally like that idea because then it's not like a rigid system, kind of like Colton said, that you don't get to work with the students individually. So then lastly, you could just add some of these ideas to your existing rules or classroom management plan. So I feel like a lot of these rules are already what I would use in my classroom anyway. I may not word them the same way, but they're already kind of these rules anyway. So you can just add these to your classroom management plan, maybe just word them a little bit differently, and it's very similar. Do we have any questions? I think I know what questions come in, but do we have any questions?
I have a different one this time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so like with most of your stuff, like going in with like the taking responsibility and then the act in a safe way, treat all property and respect the rights and needs of others. Is this like more of like a school-wide policy, or did you like see more just like individual teachers taking it on? Because I would see it being way more productive as like a whole school policy or thought process.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention that earlier, and I thought we had that done, but we didn't. And for the most part, it is, it's gonna be really hard to implement just this when you have other teachers doing other strategies.
Right.
So I think, to really hone this in, you'd have to have it as a school-wide thing. Because then as a freshman, you get it taught, by the time you're a senior, you know it, so, I think, yeah, you'd have to.
Would you guys use this?
I think I would use pieces of it. I really like with this model that it shows students why I have to behave this way. And so I'm big, again, being in math, that kids are gonna ask, well, why do I have to know this? That they don't wanna learn it if there's not an application to life. And so I really like that this does apply to life outside of school, because if they break these rules outside of school, there could be bigger consequences in life. So I really like that it ties it to that. So I may not use this like exactly 100%, but I do like the idea of tying it back to Bill of Rights and explaining them in the way that this did.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of, obviously, as a history guy, I think Bill of Rights is good stuff, so, but no, I think, you can use a lot of things. I like, how it talks about, property and being respectful of others, and I think that kind of thing, those core values are good to have, but I would also, implement some of these other techniques that we talked about.
Yeah, I think all the rules, I think everybody's mentioned this, all the rules, you get the respect that comes in there, and it's very explicit. Not only do we think that's important, but our founding fathers are who
Yeah.
made the Bill of Rights,
That's
right?
right. Smart
Okay.
guys right there.
Smart guys right there, and that's just human way it's gonna work. That novel, what's the novel where they go to the desert island and
More of the flies.
Lord of the Flies, and they don't have bills of rights or things like that, and what happens?
Chaos.
Chaos, and they end up killing each other and everything. It's been a long, long time since I read that, but, so these bills of rights are just within all of the plans when you think about it, as you're establishing your rules and whatever.
Any other questions?